Hey everybody, it's Matt with Rocky's War Room, and tonight I'm going to show you how to build a battle board for the game Test of Honor by Warlord Games. Here, as you can see, there's a piece of 3-foot by 6-inch by 3-foot by 6-inch piece of pink insulation foam that I picked up at the local hardware store. Now, the reason why I did 3-foot by 6-inch is so I could have an area where you can put the cards and dice on the outside of the board. And as you can see, the higher levels there, the 2-foot long or 3-foot long piece by the 2-foot long piece there, I created a hill, and not only that, I marked off where the 3-foot by 3-foot spot was. Then I marked out the river, as you see in the bottom corner. Then I stuck another piece up off to the left to fit up there as a higher hill on one side, just to kind of break it up just a little bit. Then I glued it and framed it in with wood and screws. I made it super tight to make sure it stays in there. Then I started marking off where the river goes, where the roads, the possible roads that I wanted, possibly, or rivers, and I cut out the steps. And I added a little bit of a hill to the right side of the screen there. Then I marked out where I wanted possibly some trees. I glued everything in, and I started digging out for that river using a knife, always cutting away from myself, of course, and trying to just kind of form where the river's going to be. And here's a shot of the steps. I simply started at the very top and started cutting out pieces all the way down. I didn't do anything special. All I did was cut them out with a hobby knife, as you can see up there in the top left, and then just carved it out and rounded it off and sanded it. And then over here, I just took a bunch of scrap pieces to create an artificial hill going up on the right side of the board. And I simply just glued that in with Tybond wood glue, which works, I think, a little bit better than your foam glue. And here's another shot of me cutting out the river. I just kept taking chunks out of it. I was going to use a foam cutter, but I found the foam cutter just didn't dig that deep. And if it did, it possibly ruined it. Then after all that was done, I started casting the rocks. Now these rocks are made out of Woodland Scenics plaster, hydrocal. And what I did was I took some adhesive tube caulking, and after they were all casted, and I caulked them to the actual foam itself right there on the wall. As you can see, I spread them out sporadically, not any kind of order whatsoever, and just kind of brought them all the way down to one side to the other, as you can see over here on the finished pieces. Right. And here is a house that I built, the first Japanese house. We'll see pictures of this later, painted up for the actual battle board itself. Here you can see that I started to cover the table with Sculpt-A-Mold. I used that over filler instead because I thought that the fibers held it together a little bit stronger, and this is the main part of the board, and it's really going to take a beating as far as like putting the models across, scraping things across and stuff like that. I wanted it to be pretty solid and have some sort of fibers in there. You could use filler of some kind, drywall filler, something like that would work great too. But I felt like the Sculpt-A-Mold was the best choice to make here. Not only that, it made good undulations through the on the surface itself. I didn't really smooth it out all that much. I didn't sand it down or anything, just so it could be broken up a little bit. Another thing I did here is I took a foam cutting knife right on the top of the rocks and leveled out the foam with the tops of the rocks. That way it could be level with the surface of the tops of the rocks and it won't look strange. Here in this photo, as you can see, I started filling in all the cracks with the Sculpt-A-Mold on all the rocks and the top portions to kind of connect the whole entire top piece together with no seams. Here in this picture, you can see a close-up of how I put the Sculpt-A-Mold in the cracks without taking away the detail on the face of the rocks. This way, all the holes and the gaps in the rocks, it looks like it's all one and inside of the mountainside. As you see here, I didn't put a full amount of Sculpt-A-Mold on the steps. And the reason for that is that purple color shows through as if they cut something under the steps and add some variation in color in the type of granite or rock that they cut it from. So when you put the paint on, it'll have a different color. Here's the middle of the board, right in the back corner. As you can see, I filled in all the gaps without taking away the detail from all the rocks. I also left little holes in there to simulate the crevices and the holes burrowed from animals or bugs or what have you. Here is the right side of the board. I finished it up by filling all the cracks, not taking away any of the detail from the actual surface of the rocks, just to kind of bring the flow of it together. Here's the Japanese house. It's finished, it's painted. I used buff on the panels there. I used a Agrax Earth shade over the wood parts after I painted the wood parts in a GW color called, what's it called? Mornfang Brown. Then I painted the roof in various green colors. It turned out nicely and a good addition to the board. As you can see here, I took a 50-50 mix of an earth color from Vallejo, tan earth I believe is what I used, and mixed it with water. And then I spread it out all across the ground areas, or the earth color areas. Then I took a mixture of 50-50 mix of water and black and tapped them on just the plain white rocks in various areas. Then I took a stone gray from Vallejo, mixed it with 50-50 water, and went in different spots than I went for the black. After that, I went over the whole entire rocks with a mixture of matte varnish or Mod Podge over the whole entire thing and waited till it completely dried. Then I went over the whole entire thing with stone gray again and sealed it once more with the matte Mod Podge. And that created the rock look that you see here in the photo. The next thing I did is I sprayed the whole entire thing with a 50-50 mix of PVA glue. Elmer's is the brand I used, over the entirety of the earth spots, avoiding the rocks as much as possible. So I brushed on the glue, sprinkled on the dark colors in the deep crevices, the lighter colors I spread out, and then the super light burnt grass over the top to finish it off. As you can see, there's some of that white PVA that is still drying on the insides there. And I went over the top of it again with a wetting agent of alcohol with a couple drops of dish soap in it. Then I sprayed the whole entire thing with a mister bottle over the top of all the grass that I already previously put down. After that, you can see with the river on the right there, I put down a bunch of Quikrete sand, and it comes in a big giant bag, really cheap, for $5. And this is the effect that you get before I pour the water. It's really nice, it's spread out, and it's even, and the shadows are where the shadows belong, and the highlights are where the highlights belong, on the top parts of the hills. And this also created a variation of colors between the heights in the small rolling hills of the battle board itself. And it come out quite nicely. I like the effect that I got. And on to the next thing, which was pouring the water. As you can see, I got the 3 bottles there, the squirt bottles that I bought off Amazon to spray the grass with. I did 3 coats, letting each individual coat dry after I've sprayed it 24 hours, and then reapplied with the wetting agent, then the glue as well. Then I put some of the finished models and my first cherry blossom tree that I made. Now this is made using polyfiber and one of the armatures from Woodland Scenics. I just put the polyfiber over the cherry blossom tree. Then I got the Woodland Scenics, or not Woodland Scenics, I'm sorry, Scenics Express cherry blossom flock, which is nothing more than basically paper mache grounded up in 3 different colors, white, pink, and red. I think I'll make my own in the future for that. So there's a few shots of what it looks like on the battle board once they're completed. The next thing I did was poured the river. And for this, I used my friend Luke App's idea for resin, and I used jade green Vallejo paint, watered down to tint the water a jade color. But before I did this, I did some various rocks, and I sealed the entirety of the Quikrete sand underneath with a PVA glue, 3 different coats, but just to seal it in, to make sure the resin doesn't get away from me. And I also put some driftwood in there and let it sit for 24 hours. and it's the resin that Luke Apps. You can go look at his channel and find out what he bought and purchased. It was the resin and the catalyst combined to make a big batch, and this here took about 150 milliliters. Then I went over the whole entire top of it with a Mod Podge gloss, and I took a straw after I put it in sections and blew on the Mod Podge to create the waves in the river. And as you can see, here's a long shot. I've got the pagoda in the background. That pagoda is from Sarissa Precision. It's the next thing I added to my battle board. I put it together in one night, and I think it looked awesome. There's a good shot from up above, and as you can see, the rocks, where I laid some grass up on the steps there after the finished product, looking up at the pagoda. And I put it in the corner strategically so you can get a good look from this angle. And as you can see in these pictures, pagoda in the background of the water ripples, that I'm going to do a very, very light dry brush of white over the top of them before it's all done. There's the pagoda when I finally finished it on my desk. It was a very fun build, very fun to paint. I think it's 28 millimeter. It's from, if you go to Warlord Games, Test of Honor, click on that tab, you'll find it in the after the link. And there's a few shots of it. It didn't take me very long at all to build. And it paints up quite nicely. The detail is there. I think if you're doing any kind of Test of Honor board, I would definitely go out and get one of these to add to the table. It's kind of a signature piece. That's why I took so many pictures of it. I'm pretty proud of it. And I'll go through a painting guide of how to paint it here in this 1 second when we get to the picture. There it is. There is the base of the pagoda. I used a flat red with a dry brush of scarlet on the fence. I used many different colors of browns, whites, grays over the entirety after I sprayed it with a Storm Vermin Fur from GW primer over the entirety. And then I just picked out some of the stones and I mixed together a 50-50 mix of Agrax Earthshade and Nuln Oil together to get the over the whole entire thing twice. And then I dry brushed it with a stone gray and then finally a silver gray. And this is the desired effect you get on the base of the pagoda for Test of Honor. A few extra shots there on my desk. I'm pretty proud of that one. I think it looks nice. You can see the different variations of the stone and where I dry brushed it. And there's obviously the blank part in the center there. You can see the woods kind of showing there. I put some browns and greens in there as well. And then after I finished that, I got the first piece done. I used a deep blue on the roof sections where the shingles are. And I used a off-white and a buff for the very top part underneath there. I did first I did a sand, dark, pale sand over the buff. I first painted it buff, then did a pale sand over the top of it. Then for the red, I did the same scheme that I did on the base. For the red, I used a flat red, and I highlighted it and dry brushed it with scarlet, Vallejo Scarlet. There's a few more shots of it. And moving on, there it is on the table with the second piece on top of it. And I did the same exact process for the second row. Deep blue for the shingles, the red, the flat red, the scarlet for all the red parts underneath. Painting the whole entire panels buff, and then painting the lower part of the panels in an off-white, watered down, probably about almost, I'd say about a third water to 2/3 paint. And there it is on top. And the third section, it's pretty much the same as the two lower sections of the pagoda, with the flat red dry brush and highlight with scarlet, the deep blue on top with a pale blue dry brush. I forgot about that part on the blue itself. Then I did a blue shade over the top from GW. It's the only blue that GW has. It's called Dragonoth Nightshade, I believe. And as you can see, it's black for the very top there. I just used a flat black. And here's a few pictures of it on the table, and I think it looks gorgeous. That's my favorite piece that I've done for this table, and that's how you paint it. Now here's the finished product for the most part. I got the water done. I put down some bushes, some lily pads in the water. I used the Mod Podge to lock all that in, and I painted the entirety of the outside of the board in this black color, as you see. And as you can see with the cards sitting on the table, that's where the cards are going to go during playtime, and where the dice will go when you're not using them. And here's another shot from this side, this angle right here. As you can see, the black kind of frames everything in and makes it, one picture, one section. You can almost picture it for a Test of Honor game somewhere in Japan. And there's one more shot, and as you can see off to the right, I assembled the Sarissa Precision Watchtower. Took me about, 20-25 minutes, and I painted it brown. Here is a bamboo scatter piece that I created. The base is made out of a CD that I wasn't using anymore. I covered the hole with a piece of cardboard, and I got this bamboo here from Hobby Lobby. It's in the modeling and train section, and all I did was glue it onto the CD, and then I used a medium gel, and then I flocked it, and then I put all these bushes in brush. And off to the right there, you can see I took a couple of Woodland Scenics armatures. I threw a bunch of tufts on it. I threw the polyfiber and some clump foliage around it, and then sprinkled, after spraying it with a Mod Podge over the top, I sprinkled on some burnt grass over the top of the trees, and I flocked it. And it's also on a CD base as well, with a bunch of gamer grass tufts. Now in this picture, as you can see, that one on the left, that's the tree one I was just talking about, the cherry blossom, the first one I made. And then I made a cherry blossom tree out of wire, floral wire from Hobby Lobby as well. You twist the armatures. There's plenty of videos out there. I'd probably recommend going and seeing Terrain Tutor wire armature tutorial. He can show you how to twist the arms up. And I simply just used the same scheme of polyfiber, the Scenic Express cherry blossom flock. After I sprayed the polyfiber with a bunch of spray adhesive that I got from Hobby Lobby as well. It's just a spray glue, and then you sprinkle it on, you spray glue it again, you sprinkle it on, and then you seal the whole entire thing with a spray of Mod Podge. I also will later on have a tutorial on just how to do the cherry blossom tree from start to finish. I think it came out pretty good. Now the next thing I did, Sarissa Precision makes these wonderful ruler sets. They're katanas for Test of Honor, and I just painted them up in a simple red versus blue paint scheme, and they're 9 inches long. And here you have the Sarissa Precision's Japanese bridge. Comes in the set that costs about $60 USA that you can buy and paint, and it's the same red scheme as the Pagoda, except I used Vallejo old wood on the planks going across, and of course I flocked either side and put a few tufts on there and put it over the river, and it made it perfect. So when you're designing the river and you want to put a bridge on, make sure that this bridge or another bridge will fit over it. And finally, I have another scatter piece of bamboo made in the same way, except this one's done on an oval acrylic base. This oval acrylic base I purchased from, I believe it was Litco, and I had the dimensions for it, and it really didn't need dimensions for it, but I thought it'd be perfect scatter piece of line of sight blocking. And overall, here's the look of the finished product that I have as of current. I'm going to add probably more to this, but this is probably the right amount of terrain that you want to add or put on the table. That way it doesn't get too crowded. As you see in these pictures here too, there's some lanterns. There's some lanterns for the Test of Honor game. They come into play and some of the scenarios for Test of Honor. And I flocked them and obviously put tufts on them, made them look good. I'm going to add candles, flicker light candles to them later. But there's an overall shot. I think there's some great terrain on here. I think it fills it nicely. I got a couple houses that go on there. And there's all my painted Hojo Force that I have on the table, just to kind of give it a look and see how many you can have on the board, to see if maybe it's not too crowded. I got some some crazy pictures there, trying to find some different angles on looking at the board to kind of show you guys that how realistic you can really make a board and how simple and easy it is to do. And here comes some overhead shots of the battle board itself. If you have any questions about how or what I did on this board, please leave them in the comments below. I will answer them as quickly as I can and as best I can to help you out. I hope you enjoyed this video of how to make a Test of Honor battle board. I hope it was informative, and for all you guys who had questions out there on how I did it, I hope I answered it for you. If this is your first time, please subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Spread the word, like this video, leave me some comments like I said. And last but not least, from me to you, ta-ta, and I'll see you in the next video.